our life is the sum total of our decisions, our choices, and our actions. If you look at where you are today, our habits really are the main reason we are where we are.
All right. Well, good day and welcome to our podcast. Today I have Mr. John St. James. He is an internationally certified life coach, performance coach, an 8th degree black belt, and founder and grandmaster of a international martial arts federation. Today we're going to be discussing a book that is just about to hit the shelves or Amazon, and it is called The Master's Path: How to Intentionally Create More Happiness, Joy, and Fulfillment in Your Life. Specifically today, we're going to be discussing one portion of the book on success habits. But before we get into that, could you give us a little brief summary of yourself, a little intro for those of us that don't know that much about you and your career and your passion for this?
Sure, be happy to. Yeah. So I am John St. James, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the podcast. So as Mr. Harmon was just mentioning, I am in the life coaching business. I just finished a book that Mr. Harmon just mentioned, and it will be coming out real soon. And, my specialty, I'm an internationally certified speaker, coach, mentor, guide. I have clients primarily through a couple of my different business organizations that I oversee, but I work with anybody and everybody to help them to develop lasting, positive, lasting change, transformational change. And so what we're going to be talking today about is one of those things. It's called success habits. And as we're speaking about success habits today, we're also going to be talking about not just habits that we need to ensure our success, but also habits that we need to get rid of. Because we all have habits, and some of them are not as good as others. So that's kind of what we're focused in on today. So with that, I will ask Mr. Harmon if you just want to get started and ask away. And I'm here to hopefully share as much information, hopefully that to help our attendees, our participants, and our viewing group.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. To start off, so the book is basically a how-to. Is it a instructional manual? Is it an inspirational manual? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, you know what? I'd like to say it's all the above. It is certainly a instructional manual, but it's really more of a journey. Now, if you think about your life, you're on a life journey. We're all on a life journey. And as we go through the life journey, we have opportunities to increase and transform our performance. And we're going to be talking about how to do that today. So yes, I would like to think that it is inspirational, and it certainly is informational. And so it's instructional as well. But it's also, there's anecdotes in there, little stories that I share, experiences that I've had over 45 years of coaching others and leading. So yeah, it's a little bit of all of that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's interesting. So this is, applicable to anyone from corporate executives down to Boy Scout leaders, or anywhere in between. So this is an everyone kind of book.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a good question you're asking. I think that this book will benefit anybody. I think it's written more for the adults. It's written by an adult, and it's targeting adults. Having said that, there's a lot of information in there that I think will benefit teenagers. I don't think it's a book for children, to be honest with you. I think some of the things that we discuss can be some of the things that we go through, like even today, some of those things can be shared with youth, but you'd have to change, you'd have to be addressing the audience in a little different way than the way this book reads. This book is more for adults.
Yes, I agree. But as you mentioned, teenagers being the owner of two of them, I could see how this would be very prudent, especially at this time with social media, lots of bad habits that I'm seeing in the world in general. You know, so yeah, I think if they had the bandwidth to follow the book, you know, and that being said, is it written in a style that is easy to follow? I should think so, but I mean, is that what it's kind of intended, that it is a fairly easy to follow and, you know, follow these steps and hopefully end up with the right results?
I think so. I really do. I will tell you, I'm not a professional writer. I wasn't trained to be a professional writer. Having said that, one of the success habits that I would like to think that I have is that I'm smart enough to know and identify those areas that I need assistance in. So fortunately for me, I was able to hire a professional writer who has been working on this book for a while with me. Now, although it is my writing was helped along and made much easier to follow. And so to answer your question directly, yes, I think it is going to be something that's going to help people. And I think it's going to be a fairly easy read. There's a lot of information in it, I will tell you that. So it's best read as you actually take the journey. And it's set up that way. It's set up so that you're on a path. You start at the beginning, and as you're working through the chapters, you're working on specific success attributes, traits. And again, today we're going to be talking about some of the habits that we'll be working on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And not to be loaded in any way, you know, what motivates you to help people, and what motivated you to do this book? You know,
Yeah,
what really drives you?
yeah, it's a good question. When you are a coach or a teacher, especially in what we teach mind, body, and spirit. We teach how to improve our lives and the lives of those that we share with, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I don't mean that in a religious sense. I mean developing spirit, the warrior spirit. And so, there's lots of ways to do that, right? So one of the things that I have found over the years is when you have curriculum or content, that will be something that can be used by anybody, right? They can take that content, they can work on it at their own pace. And so why do I do that? I do that because inside of me, I love to share, I love to serve, I love to give back. One of the success habits that I think most successful people have, I want to believe, is that they believe that, you always get more by giving. And I've come to believe that as well over the years, that when you give, you end up receiving. So by giving this information out to as many people as I can, I feel ultimately that I'll be helping more people. And of course, that will help me as well. So yeah,
Sure.
It's all good, as I like to say.
Paying forward.
Absolutely.
The world definitely needs a lot more of that.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So I've read a bit of your book. I haven't completed it. I've read bits and pieces of it. But, I find the chapter on success habits pretty interesting. And so could you explain a little bit more about success habits? What are they? How do you form them? Just a basic overview on success habits.
Sure, absolutely, be happy to. So first of all, I want to clarify one thing, and that is that there isn't a chapter specifically on success habits. The book is full of success habits. So if you were to think about this, as you're taking your life journey, everything that we do is based on what we have developed in the way of knowledge, attitude, our attitude and how we see things, our skill sets, how we've been able to develop certain skills along the way. And then the H is habits. And this is the acronym for this is CASH, K-A-S-H. We call it the success cycle. And the success cycle, the reason it's a cycle is as we go through life, we're constantly developing our knowledge. We're constantly working on our attitude. We're constantly developing our skills. Hopefully we're refining our skills. And there's this one little thing there. When we talk about habits, we're not always, all of us, working on our habits, because habits are automatic programming. If you really think about it, a lot of what we do subconsciously. We do because it's become a ritual or a routine. You've heard the acronym R&R, right? R&R, we know it's rest and relaxation. Well, we're going to give you a different acronym today. It's called rituals and routines. And so through our rituals and our routines, we're able to start to develop what's called neuroassociative conditioning, NAC, okay? We create what's often referred to as a brain groove. And so just like on an album, old days we had albums and of course CDs after that, as the information is etched onto the disc, in your subconscious mind, your rituals and routines are etched into your brain. You're wired to do things a certain way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, because there are certain things that I think everybody needs to be aware of when we talk about developing success habits and uprooting bad habits. So but getting back to your question, when we talk about the success cycle, there's just a couple things that we want to remember. Number one, who we are and what we are is all based on our habits. So this is a very, very important topic. And number two, our life is the sum total of our decisions, our choices, and our actions. If you look at where you are today, our habits really are the main reason we are where we are. So I asked myself quite some time ago, you'd asked about, how did I get into this and what's my passion and why do I do this? I've always been interested in studying successful people. I've always tried to model successful people. And by the way, that is a success habit. And one of the things that I have learned over the years is the reason why successful people tend to be more successful than others is because they have success habits. They do things more successfully than most people. They use their time more successfully. They use their energy more successfully. They use their resources more successfully. They actually think more successfully. So if you think about it that way, this is a very, very important topic. So when we talk about the success cycle, we talk about habits, which is what we're talking about today. It's not a whole chapter, but it's a big part of the entire book.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, it sounds like we need to start recognizing as individuals, that the first step I would think is recognizing bad habits and recognizing good habits as well, the ones that give you the rewards, going, wow, I like that. I like the results of that habit, or wow, I do not like the results of this. Mm-hmm. But some people get in a rut. I think most of us in some way, shape, or form have a bad habit of some sort.
For sure.
Well, some of them are much worse than others. But how do we recognize and take the first step to start replacing bad habits with good habits or changing them?
Yeah. Now, this is a very, very important topic. The answer is awareness. So if I was to say, what is one attribute that you must have to be successful and to create successful habits, is awareness. You just, it's easy to say and it's hard to do, because as you come to learn in life, our spouses, significant others, our friends, our family, they tend to be more aware of our habits than we are our own.
Yes.
And this is a defense mechanism that's literally built into your subconscious mind. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, before I go directly into what are the steps to creating success habits, let's just continue on just for a moment, because I think it's important with the background. So all of our habits come through what we call phase one of the journey, which in the book I call the success paradigm. And the success paradigm is phase one is learning and growing, sometimes referred to as the cognitive phase. So these are our formative years. And during this time, we are learning from who? Well, we're learning from those who influence us. We're learning from our parents, our teachers, our friends, our family. We're learning from coaches. So anybody that's influencing us at this point, we're watching this. We're aware of this. And so what's happening is we're starting to formulate our habits. And that's why even as you grow into an adult, you find yourself doing things that your parents used to do. In fact, there's a commercial on right now. It's hysterical. I forget the company, and we don't want to give them the plug anyway, but it's about becoming more and more like your parent as you get older. And some of those habits that we grew up with, they're still with us as we get older. Some of them serve us very well, and some of us not so much. So our upbringing is a big part of this. Now, as far as how do we change that? How do we start to become aware of those habits that aren't serving us? Well, you just really have to take note and become aware of where you are in relation to where you want to be. I work with coaching clients on what I call the 3 top banner goals. There are 3 most important goals for the year. And so if you look at your 3 most important goals, you realize that it is here where you can start to look to see, do I have the habits that are needed to get me from where I am to where I want to be? So that's where we start. We're aware of what do we want, what are we looking for, what do we want to achieve, and are our habits supporting those things? So awareness is number 1. I want to take a moment here, but before I do you have any questions on that much? Because I know that I'm giving you a lot, and I don't want to. I want to take it step by step here, if I can.
Yes, yeah. I think again, as I mentioned, I thought the most realistic way to go about this is to recognize first. You have to, if you don't recognize what's going on, your bad habits, your good habits, well, then you don't have anything to start with. You have no information. So, and again, there's a lot of people that recognize they eat a lot of junk food and it makes them feel terrible and it's bad for their health, but yet they keep doing it.
That's
So
right.
once they recognize, oh, this doesn't make me feel good, but then they keep doing it. It's an addiction. It's a habit. How do you make that transition from acknowledgement to actually doing something about it?
Yeah, and that is a great question. And that, at the seat of your question, or the root of your question, is pain versus pleasure. The motivating force of life, right? So I know that I shouldn't eat sweets a lot. Once in a while, not a problem. But if I'm always eating sweets, we know that can do damage to our health. But yet, once we get addicted to something as strong as sugar, or we get addicted to something as strong as whatever, fill in the blank. There's all types of things to become addicted to. Television, the internet, right? Social
media, yes.
Social media, whatever it is, fill in the blank, it doesn't matter. Whatever that thing is, once it becomes a habit, it becomes very difficult to get rid of, because it's so deeply rooted. Our wiring, this again goes back to, so let me explain this in a way that I hope will make good sense. Okay, where do habits reside? Well, they reside in our mind. They reside in our mind. So let's zoom out for just a minute and let's take a look at this. Your brain, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, you know what? We're so blessed, right? We have the most most powerful computer right on top of our shoulders. With trillions of connections, billions of neurons, we're able to do things that are just absolutely remarkable. So it's not a question of potential, it's just a question of habits. Because the computer is programmed a certain way. So the brain is the hardware, your mind is the software. You can take the mind and divide it into two parts. You've got the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Now, conscious mind, imagine, is the size of a baseball. The subconscious mind is the size of a large pumpkin. It's huge. And as you know, the subconscious mind is autonomous. It's automatic. Our heart beats without us having to think about it. We have thoughts constantly going through our mind without having to think about it because they're already there. So here's what I want you to get out of this. If you want to truly create success habits, you've got to start with what's called the self-identity set point. Okay? Self-identity set point. Now, I'm going to give you a quick definition of what that is. That is a combination of your self-concept, how you see yourself, right? So I see myself as a leader. You see yourself as a leader. So we have a concept of ourselves. Some people see themselves maybe as a follower. That's fine. That's just a different way of seeing yourself. Some people see themselves as a master craftsman. That's a different way of seeing yourself. Some people see themselves as a technician. It's a different way of seeing yourself, but that's your self-concept. Attached to your concept is your self-image. It's literally how you see yourself. Okay? It's the image you have of yourself. This is in your mind. And then attached to that is your self-esteem, your confidence. Now, what does that have to do with everything we're talking about? Everything. Let me explain. So you are in the building trade. Very few people know that, but you are a master craftsman. You are a builder par excellence. And you know that in every house, you have to put a thermostat. And that thermostat controls the HVAC. And you know that that thermostat is programmed. And it's programmed at a set point. It's programmed at what we call homeostasis, or your comfort zone. So if you program into your thermostat that your comfort zone or your family's comfort zone is 73 degrees, then what happens when that room gets to 74? The AC kicks in. And then what happens when that same room goes down to 68? The heat kicks in. So the whole goal of the thermostat is to keep your house at a comfortable level. That's exactly what's going on in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is programmed through your habits by the self-identity set point to be able to rise to a certain level. But then when you go above that level, or you try to go above that level, all of a sudden you start to have fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of a lack of control, fear of change, fear of fear. And so before long, you're unable to do the very thing you need to do because you hit what's called the terror barrier. Let me say it again, friends, terror barrier. And all that simply is you put a new, there's a new idea, a new habit, a change that you know you need to make, but your program in your subconscious mind, your self-identity set point, your thermostat is set at a certain level. And now you're trying to make the change and you can't figure out, why can't I get through this? And the answer is, are you ready? The answer is you haven't tried long enough. The answer is you haven't been consistent. You haven't been persistent. You haven't gone at it enough. It's like to desensitize yourself to the point where something that you were afraid of is no longer fearful, you have to do the very thing you're fearful of. I'll give you a great example. I have no problem with public speaking. I'm thinking you know that already.
Yes.
There
Yes.
was a time when I could speak in front of a group of students, 50, 100 students, no problem at all, because I was in total control. But the second that I was a young man in my 20s and I was asked to present to a group of managers at a corporation that I was working at, all of a sudden, whoa, fear, because I wasn't in control of that situation. Some of these people were my bosses. And all of a sudden, my homeostasis, my self-identity set point, my comfort zone was threatened. And so what happens is your body starts to do whatever it can do. Your mind starts to shut things down. So I don't want to go too deep into this. We will have a separate podcast on the terror barrier, because that alone is something that everybody needs to know. But back to your question, I want you to think of it this way before we get into how do we change these things and how do we create the habits that we want. One of the easiest ways to look at this, much easier than self-identity set point, is a story I'll share with you real quickly. And that is father and son, and you've got sons, father and son walking through the forest. And you've walked through many forests. You're surrounded by forests where you live.
Yes.
And the father caught the son in a little lie, nothing big, just a little lie, but father knows. And the father didn't say, I know you're lying. Father said, son, I want you to, you see that pine sapling, that little pine sapling, it's only a couple inches high. I want you to bend over and pull that out. The son went down, he grabs it, he pulls it out real easily because the roots were very shallow, very, very shallow. So they continued to walk, and then the father said, okay, see that sapling over there? This one was about 12 to 15 inches high. He said, I want you to pull that one out. So son bent over and he pulled. It was a little harder, but yeah, he yanked it out, no problem. So they continue through the forest, and now all of a sudden they come upon a tree, small pine tree, probably 2 to 3 feet tall, not big, but those roots were deeper. And he said, son, I want you to go ahead and pull that one out. The son goes down, he grabs it with one hand, no success, grabs it with 2 hands and starts yanking, and finally pulls it out. And then he said, son, you see that oak tree over there? He said, I want you to try to pull that one out. And the son looked at him and said, Dad, I can't do that. He said, nobody could pull that out. He said, and you know why? He said, because those roots are so deep. He said, that is what a habit is like. He said, if you get in the habit of lying and you do it over and over and over again, son, he said, those habits become so deeply rooted and the lies become so big. He said, before long, you can't pull them out. So he said, it's better to nip it in the bud now. He said, like that little sapling, it was easy to pull out. He said, I want you to get in the habit of telling the truth. He said, that's a habit you want for the rest of your life. Very similar to, if I may say, jumping in a stream. Think about that, okay? You're a whitewater guy, I know that. In addition to being a great rock climber, I know you've been in plenty of whitewater. When you jump into a stream, if the current is strong enough, it will take you downstream with no effort whatsoever. And that's just like our habits. Let me explain. Good habits are hard to form, but they're very easy to live with. It's like jumping in a stream. It's easy. You can just kick back and just let it take you downstream. Very little effort, a good habit. So we were talking about the stream. And again, if you think about the stream, going downstream is relatively easy. When you're trying to change a bad habit, it's like swimming upstream. It's like all of a sudden you change direction and now you're trying to swim against the current. And real bad habits that have been in place a long time is a very strong current to be swimming against. So when we're talking about the background and we're talking about why it's, how do we start the process? Your question is, what do? We identify it, we become aware of it. but we also have to realize that everything we want is upstream. Everything we want is, if you prefer, uphill. And so there's going to be struggle. It's not going to be easy to change the habit that may be getting in the way of your success and progress. However, it's well worth the effort.
Yes, sir. Yes. I find that, in my life and probably everyone's life, complacency, is comfortable. It's that comfort zone that you were talking about. But I've found that everything that's worthwhile in my life has been difficult.
Yeah,
There is not a thing in my life that really means anything that was easy.
for sure. Absolutely correct. So, I think the thing that I'd like to add to what we just discussed is, how do we actually create new habits? And again, this is all about success habits. So how do we create those? And so to answer your question, you're right. The first thing is awareness. We have to identify what it is that we want to change. And then number two, I'm going to give you basically 6 steps. The second step is we have to decide in advance, no exceptions. So sometimes that means removing the temptation. So you were talking about a sweet tooth, or you were talking about eating desserts, or we got on that subject about food. Sometimes you just have to remove the temptation. If you go to the store and you realize that when you go to the store you're hungry and you want to buy sweets, you bring those sweets back, you put them in your cupboard or your food pantry, and now all of a sudden when you get hungry, you go for that because it's quick and easy. So removing the temptation is 2, or if you prefer, no exceptions. Okay, the third one is to tell others. The third one is to tell others. If you want to make a change, what you want to do is you want to tell other people so that you have accountability. The more people you tell that I'm making this change, the more chance you have of being aware when you stumble. Because other people are going to see you do it and they're going to remind you, I thought you said, especially people in your family, I thought you said you were going to do this. So 3 is to tell others. The next one is to create affirmations. So let me give you an example. And by the way, this is sometimes called auto-suggestion. And we teach this. We'll be teaching this in the T3P program, Transformation to Total Practitioner. And what this is let's say that I wanted to become better at goal setting, which is a success habit, clearly. So some of the auto suggestions or peak performance prompts, I like to call them, that we might use as an affirmation would be like, goals we set are goals we get. I'm affirming that if I'm going to set a goal down, which means I'm writing it down, I'm going to get that goal. Goals we set, goals we get. Or maybe we're saying something like, the goal is not to finish the list, but to enjoy the process and always persist. Now I've got another affirmation. I've got a list of goals, but achieving those goals, although they're very important, let's not forget that success is not in the destination. It's in the journey. It's the process of getting to where we want to go. So I'm going to enjoy the process. I'm always going to persist, even though I got the list. So these are examples of affirmations. So again, what do we want to do? We want to identify first what it is that we want to change. What is the success habit we want? Or it might be, what is the bad habit we want to get rid of? We want to uproot. Now there's good news, right? Here's the good news. Habits are learned. That means habits can also be unlearned. So if we can learn a good habit, we can also unlearn a bad habit. Unfortunately, as I shared, bad habits tend to get more deeply rooted over time. So we want to keep this in mind. So identify, be aware. We want to make sure that there's no exceptions. We want to remove temptation. That's part of the 2. The third one, of course, we want to tell others. The fourth one, we want to affirm, create affirmations. Number next is we want to visualize. We want to see ourselves performing the habit that we want. If we can put in our mind an image of ourselves doing the very thing we're looking to do, well, we're already doing it. And you see this all the time with successful athletes, world champions. A free throw, I remember Larry Bird back in my day, I'm dating myself, one of the greatest free throwers of all time. And when they asked him, how much do you practice? He said, all the time. No, I mean, how many hours do you practice? He said, well, I practice on the gym floor probably a couple hours a day. But he said, I'm always throwing free throws in my mind. He said, I visualize myself doing what I'm going to do before I do it. So visualization is critical. Number next, consistency. You know, one of my mentors, John Maxwell, and actually I'm part of the John Maxwell team as a certified speaker, coach, and mentor. He said one time, and I thought it was great, he said, you know, everybody starts, but few finish. And I would add to that, everybody starts, but few finish, and even fewer finish well. And here's what I mean. Consistency. If you want to put in a success habit, you have to do it consistently. You have to consistently do the thing that you want to make it, to wire your brain, okay? You know, we talked about the brain, neuroplasticity. You're able to make new connections in your brain by doing things. The more you do them, the more that wiring gets set in place. So consistency, perseverance is critical. The last one is to reward yourself. Always remember to reward yourself when you do finally put a success habit in place. That might be, you know, I got up all week long at 5 a.m. and I took the first 30 minutes to power read or to learn something new. And so on Saturday, I reward myself with a good meal or watching a favorite show or whatever it's going to be. So those are the steps that we need to be able to plant or to grow or nurture the success habits we're looking for.
Yes, sir. So almost a Pavlovian reward system in place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nature.
Exactly.
Yeah. Animal instinct.
That's right. I mean, when you come right down to it, our limbic system and our the way that we have developed over history through time is all about programming. And programming to protect ourselves. Remember this is critical because that goes back to the self-identity set point. To protect you and keep you in your comfort zone, you will avoid things that scare you or make you feel afraid. But the very things you need to do to grow to the next level require to change, you're going to have to go through those things. So how you define those things, how you define them in your, we call them paradigms, how you do that will be very important. I mentioned the success paradigm. Learn, grow, phase 1, share and serve, phase 2, lead and inspire, phase 3. As you walk through your journey, you'll be going through each one of these areas, and at each level, you should be stepping up and stepping up to your fullest potential.
That's great. That's great, sir. So we've talked a little bit about, the steps, finding, acknowledging and moving through the steps to create these. What specifically is a way to kind of reprogram? So you've found what you're doing wrong or doing right, but you need to make a change, and that's always the hard part, is actually doing it.
Right.
You've given some examples of accountability, and rewards, but is there a way to actually reprogram your mind?
Yeah, just like you would. So if you were, I'm not a computer programmer, but if you were a computer programmer, you'd write new code, right? The source code, the programming is what determines what happens. And this is the same thing with your behavior. your decisions, your choices, your actions are all based on source code. So to answer your question, we kind of already said this. You have to identify first through awareness. You have to decide in advance that it's going to be a priority, no exceptions. Okay, this is where discipline kicks in. Okay, you've got to do it consistently over time. Okay, it's not easy, but you do work at it consistently over time. And through time, you start to develop that very habit you're looking for. So first things first, identify what it is that you're trying to change. Number two, work at it consistently until it becomes truly new wiring. There's a new pathway. Now, when you start thinking about things, so I will give you a quick example. In the past, maybe you went for the cookie. Now you're going for a carrot stick. Okay. And now all of a sudden, at first, carrot stick's not like the cookie. But over a period of time, now through repetition, right? Repetition is the mother of learning. Through repetition, through the rinse and repeat process, now I go for that carrot stick all the time. Carrot stick is going to be healthier for you. It's still going to fill you up. You may have to eat a few more, but the bottom line is better for you. So that's how you do it. Now I want to share real quickly before we get to the last part here. There are 4 major pillars to creating success habits. So these are, we'll call them the 4 pillars of success. Okay. And I'd be remiss if I didn't share this with our group. So the first one, these are fairly simple to remember. First one is future orientation. So this will help explain what you just asked me. How do I determine, how do I reprogram myself? Well, the first thing is you look forward and you basically ask yourself a question. If I don't change this habit, what will I be like down the road? And is that image of myself, is that congruent with who I want to be? So let's just use the example, I'll give you a quick one. Let's say that you are trying to become a better listener. And you know that it's difficult because you like to talk. You enjoy speaking. And so what you have to do is you have to condition yourself by thinking, okay, if I don't do this, what are the repercussions? Law of cause and effect. Okay. For every cause, there's an effect. If I continually interrupt, I won't be learning the very things I need. I won't be showing the respect that the other person deserves. So you start using, in effect, this future orientation. If I don't start goal setting now and really get specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound with my goals, then what's going to happen at the end of the year? Will I have achieved the goals that are most important to me? So that would be the answer. Future orientation. All successful people are looking down the road. Although they live in the moment and they enjoy the moment, they're focused in on where are things going. Ride the horse in the direction it's going. Okay. Number 2, goal and or growth orientation. Goal or growth orientation. I'm going to put these both together for our group so we can get through this quickly. Growth orientation, I call it the X factor of success. Here's where we start to develop our goals. How do we want to grow? Why do we want to grow? What habits do we need to put in place to make sure we grow? And that's where we start into the goal setting. And we've talked about SMART goals. We want to make them personal and we want to make them present. So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say we want to lose weight. The goal wouldn't be, I'd like to lose some weight this year. The goal would be, I am blank, let's say 175 pounds. I am 175 pounds by December 31st, 2022. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, personal, present tense. Not I will, I am. I am. So goal orientation, very important. Third one, action orientation. Turning intent into action. Doing the very thing that you need to do to get to where you want to go. Creating the habits. If you're going to create success habits, you've got to spend time on them. You literally got to take the action. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson, do the thing and have the power. Do the thing and have the power simply means I do the work and I have the power. Okay. And the last one is excellence orientation. And simply excellence orientation is giving my best at whatever I do. Japanese term, you've heard it before, Kaizen, constant and never-ending improvement. My name is the mark of excellence. What I do to the very best of my ability. And of course, that changes as your knowledge, your attitude, your skills, and your habits get better. And that's why we call it the success cycle, because you're constantly working on these things as you go. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so we're talking about habits that you need to succeed, to start taking those steps. And, everyone in the world has a different goal in mind, a different habit, a different definition of success. So in their journey, their specific personal journeys, they're going to need to take different steps. But with all of them, I'm willing to bet there's some common denominators. You were talking about banner goals where everyone's goal could be different. It could be weight, health, money, this, that, the other. But with all of them, I'm sure there are common denominators. There are specific banner habits that are universal to any kind of goal. So could you give us, a top 3 or top 4 list of banner habits?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, great question. Great question. These would be similar to attributes, right? So what attributes do I need? And those attributes, if you do them enough, become a habit. So let's just, I always like to go back to the ABCs because it's really easy to remember. Let's use the alphabet. So the first one we've already talked about, and that is awareness. That is a habit to be. These would be belief, the habit of belief in yourself, the habit of believing I can do it. Because a lot of people get in the habit of I can't do that. I can't do that. But I believe I can do that is a habit. It's an attribute. It's believing in yourself. Another one, C, let's go to C, courage. Courage is a habit. And courage is extremely important because to step out of your comfort zone, you have to have courage, right? So to make change, any change whatsoever requires courage. Because here's what we know. Again, go back to your subconscious mind. You are going to face fear. You're going to fail. It will happen. The most successful people on the planet fail the most, right? So here's what we know. It's okay. As long as you have the courage to get back up, we teach this in the arts. As long as you get back up, you're on the right path. Let's go to D, discipline. Here's another one. If you want to do anything, in fact, to be honest with you, I think it's the most important one of all. Because every habit you've ever wanted, all success habits, require discipline. Just think about what we've talked about so far. To be future oriented means you need to tap the pencil, sit down and take time to brainstorm, network, research, read, whatever it's going to be. It takes discipline. Okay. It takes discipline to set goals. It takes discipline to get goals. It takes discipline to take action. I mean, it took discipline for you to, this is the first time I think you've interviewed somebody on a podcast. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's action. You took action. And the first time, like the first time you rode a bicycle, felt a little awkward. But if you did one of these every week, it would not be awkward at all. It would become very easy. And with time, we call that mushin, it would become automatic without thought, right? E, enthusiasm and effort. It's a habit. You get in life what you put into life. So if you're enthusiastic and if you put a lot of effort in, you get a lot back. Just keep going down the list. F, flexibility. It is a habit to have an open mind and be able to see things from different people's perspectives. Okay. So, I mean, we just go on and on and on. Geez, we've already talked about goal orientation. Okay. Honor, H, character, your character. All of this is part of success habits. So if I was to give you a quick list, real quick, future orientation, we've already said it's important. Goal orientation, important. Action orientation, important. Excellence, there's one for you under E. Do everything you do at your very best ability. If you get in the habit of doing that, life takes care of itself. So, consistency we've talked about, persistency we've talked about, asking good questions, being curious, being open-minded is another habit you must have. So we could go on and on. I mean, it really is just how much time do you have? But the,
Yes.
but here's the thing, the most important part of this is you define in your life what habits you need to get to your 3 top banner goals. And remember, those 3 top banner goals have to challenge you. They can't be, I'm going to get up every day, because you're going to get up every day anyway, unless you die. So there's got to be something that's going to challenge you to pull you out of that comfort zone that we talked about earlier, the self-identity set point. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I guess my last question, I think you already answered it, because the one attribute or habit that you mentioned that was relatable to every other one that you mentioned was discipline.
Absolutely.
I think that I was going to say, is there one habit that you think is the most important? And it sounds like you already answered the question, because that, like I say, it was a common denominator with all of the other habits.
I'll mention this to all our martial arts friends out there, because we have quite a few. And that is, and for any of you that are listening that are not in the martial arts, that's fine. But the one thing that is common in all traditional martial arts, which is what we study, and all sports at a very high level, and in the business world, to go to the top, and in school, to be a great student, and everything that you can imagine, the one defining character trait, attribute, and habit is discipline. It starts with a discipline to make it happen. Okay. You can't make it happen unless you have discipline. You've got to stick with it. You got to be persistent. You got to get back up when you fail, because you will fail. Okay. You got to expect challenges. So real quickly, the last thing I'm going to share today, and that is when we talked about goal orientation, I think a very important thing to leave everybody with is this. There's this great acronym. I cannot take credit for it, but I learned it, I memorized it, and I use it all the time. And I want to share it with all of you, because maybe it'll help you. And I write it every single week at the beginning of each week, and I use it every single day, every day. And it's especially when I'm working on big projects, which I seem to be working on quite a bit. And those 2 words are plan ahead. Plan ahead. Sounds like future orientation, doesn't it? But it's also growth orientation, and it's also goal orientation, and it's also action orientation, and it's also excellence orientation. And here's what it stands for. P stands for predetermine the change. This goes back to what you said. We have to identify what it is that we want to change. So predetermine that. Like the great Stephen Covey quote, begin with the end in mind. Okay. L stands for lay out the steps. Lay out the steps. You do this in your business all the time. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. Lay out the steps. A, adjust your plan, because you're going to need to. As you start to research and learn, let's say you're building a house for somebody, as you meet your client and you're asking them what they want, and you start to you're going to get feedback. And as you get feedback, things are going to change. Oh, I thought you wanted this. Well, we thought about it. My wife and I talked about it, and we want this now. Adjust the plan. N stands for notify key players. So in your line of work, it would be to notify your team that the plan has changed and here's what we need to do to reach the goal. Okay, now that takes care of plan. Let's go to ahead. Plan ahead. A is very simple. A, and this one I know you can relate with. This is allow time for acceptance. We have worked on some projects, you've been involved with them on the board of directors, where the idea was first brought to the board 5 years ago. And it took 3, 4, or 5 years for everybody to allow acceptance before it became, okay, yeah, this is a good idea and we really need to do this, right? You know what I mean, right?
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
So we've got to allow time for acceptance. We've got to H, head into action. This is the action orientation. E, we have to expect challenges because they're coming. They will be there. And actually, that's a success habit. Not only expecting challenges, but dealing with them when they come. Okay, A, we always have to always point to our successes because it's human nature to look at the negative, isn't it? Think about it. What's on the news? Negative stuff. Why? Because that's what people want. It's what gets their attention. But here's what we know. If you're pointing to successes, you're focused in the direction you want to go. Not to say you're not aware of the challenges and you don't pay attention to them, but you don't focus on them forever. You point to the successes that you've had, which helps fuel you to the next step. And the last step there is D, and that's daily improvement. Daily be working on the things that you need to work on. And what you need to work on and what I need to work on may be different things, but we're always working on improvement. That's another common denominator of all successful people. They don't stop growing. They're always looking to grow, to do something that's going to pull them out of their comfort zone. Okay. You started this interview with Sir about the book, and I'm going to finish this with the book pulled me out of my comfort zone. I'm not a professional writer. Okay. It took years. That first allow time for acceptance, that idea I wrote in my journal 10 years ago. I set the goal, it was going to take 2 years to do. It took 10. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I was not ready to write a book. I knew I wanted to write a book, future orientation. I set a goal to write a book. I even started into the action, but I wasn't ready. And that's what is like when you're creating success habits. You're not going to get them all, but if you're working on them consistently, with perseverance, with focus, with determination and discipline, stepping out of your comfort zone, you will start to grow and you will improve. That's what I wish for all of you that are listening today. I hope that that's been helpful. Sir, do you have any other questions of me?
No, sir. One thing though, I did a little research on habits and came up with a quote by Mark Twain, and you probably are familiar with this, but it goes, "Habit is habit, and not to be flung out the window by any man, but coaxed down the stairs one step at a time."
I want to thank Mr. Harmon, who's a very important part, speaking of organizations. Mr. Harmon is a key member of our organization. He's a member of our board of directors. And I want to thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule on a Saturday. As a family man, I know that's not easy, to take time to do this. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, sir. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you and share this with everyone.
And an excellent job you did, my friend. Well, we will close for now. And with that having been said, have a great weekend, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.